Hi viewers, welcome to another video of HTML and CSS. In our journey of this learning HTML and CSS, in our previous video, we took an introduction of CSS and talked about some effects of CSS on our page. Whereas in this lesson, we are going to learn about CSS syntax and different selectors and what are these selectors inside CSS. So let's get into it. First of all, what is the syntax of CSS? How do we write the CSS? So a CSS rule set contains a selector and a declaration block. So in the selector, we will be talking about selector in depth in just a minute. So in declaration block, this is a selector and then followed by these curly braces, and these curly braces contain the declaration block which contain property and value. Let's talk about each of these labels, that what does it mean by each label. So first of all, let's talk about selector. Selector indicates the HTML element you want to style. It could be a tag like h1 title, etc. So I thought you got it. Selector is any tag inside our HTML which we want to style by using the style sheet. And the next, declaration block. The declaration block can contain one or more declarations separated by semicolon. So that selector that we just selected, whatever property of it we want to style, we just write it and the value of that property inside this declaration block. And if we want to apply the style for multiple properties, that we will write those multiple properties separated by this semicolon. So after this, a property. What is a property? A property is type of attribute of HTML element. So if you want to change the color of an HTML tag, which means selector, so you would need to write color. And if you want to change the background color, then you would write background hyphen color and font size. And all of these are properties of our page. All of these are properties of our selector. Whereas the value, what do you want to assign to that property is the value of that property. So the first topic in the CSS syntax was CSS selector. CSS selectors are used to select the content you want to style, and it is a part of CSS rule set, and it selects the HTML element according to its ID, class or attribute, etc. We are going to talk about each of them. So followed by that, what are types of CSS selectors? There are actually four main types of CSS selectors: CSS element selector, CSS ID selector, CSS class selector, CSS universal selector, and CSS group selector. Let us talk about each of them. So first of all, there is CSS element selector. So in this CSS element selector, we write the name of the tag. Like if it is div, then we will be writing div. As in this example, you can see this is the style for p tag, the paragraph tag. This is the declaration block, whereas these two are properties, and these two are values of these respective properties. So whereas if we want to change the element, this style for div or h1, then we will be writing that respective HTML tag right here rather than this p. So after this, we have CSS ID selector. The CSS ID selector uses the ID attribute of the tag that we are wanting to style. So if inside, let us first, for this CSS element selector, let us get into our IDE and show you how does it work. So right here we have the file that we used in our previous sessions, and for now I am going to create another file, lesson 11 CSS selectors. So for this CSS selector, I am going to give it an extension of .html and a boilerplate CSS selectors. So for now, right here, as in our previous video, if you just saw it, in this CSS folder, in this main folder, we created a CSS folder, and this CSS folder creates a style.css. Let us use that external CSS inside our page. If you don't know what is this external CSS, internal CSS, you can refer to our previous video. We just talked about all of these things in our previous video. So let us link it. So it is a shortcut of writing that style.css. So this is style, and this is the style that is going to be used there. So let us create a p tag. Oh, sorry. It is not done like this in HTML. This is p tag. This is p tag, and for another tag, I am going to create a div tag. This is div. So for both of these tags, I am going to give some style. For p, which is element selector, I am going to go with element selector and give it a property of background color and give it black. For div, I am going to use the element selector and give it a font size of 120 pixel. So its size would just get extraordinarily big. So let's go live and see what does it affect. How does it affect it? So note in style, we have to open that we have to go live inside this HTML file, not in CSS file. So this HTML right here, it isn't actually following our styles. Why? I think you have figured it out that we did not give it the right path. Right inside this folder we have CSS folder, and in that folder we have style folder. So the path of style sheet is really important. We have to give it the right path. Right here, as you can see, the background of that, actually the text is not visible, so I can change its color to white. As you can see, it has changed. These styles are completely applicable right here. As you can see, its font size has become 120 pixel and its background has become black. So after this, as we told in our talked about it in our previous videos, that P is a block type of style, having block type of display. So it is containing a full width of the page, as you can see by its background as well. So after this, we have CSS ID selector. As I talked earlier, that it uses the ID of the element. So this is a shortcut of writing it, of creating this tag with ID. This is tag with ID. So for this ID selector, first of all we write hash sign and then the ID of that tag. So we gave it the ID of test ID, as you can see here, test ID. We should write it completely the same. There should not be any sort of case error. Right, I wrote capital I have to write small I. So for test ID, I am going to give it margin left 20 pixels. So we are going to talk about all of these properties in forward videos. So for now, I am just giving you a glimpse of using these selector types by using these different properties to show you the difference. So it has got a 20 pixel of margin from left side, whereas this is having 0 pixels of margin. So after this ID selector, we have our class selector. So as you may have understood it, that it uses the class of different tags, and all of these elements that contain the same class will get this attribute, will get this style. Whereas in ID, as I told you in our previous videos as well, that IDs are unique for each tag. So this is the ID, and I will just try my best to keep other tags in my page to have the unique ID, whereas class could match. So if I create in here h1 and give it a class attribute of class 1, and give this div tag as well the class 1. So if I write here dot mean class selector class 1, every tag that is containing the class what should it get? It should get its background color to red. So you can say red. So all of the tags that will be containing class of class 1, right here, if I may write it the right way, class 1. So these two tags, the div tag and as well tag, contain the class 1. So right, as you can see, this is containing the class 1 class 1 style, whereas the other tag, our tag, is not visible because we did not write anything. This is h1 tag. So as you can see, this is also visible right now. After this all, we have another tag type, another selector type, which is CSS class selector for specific element. So as you can see here, it is a selector with HTML tag name along with its class name. If I may come here, these two tags have the class 1 attribute, these two class tags have the same class. Whereas if I want only the h1 tag, which has class 1, so I can style it as well. Whereas this style block will just style all of the elements having dot class 1 class. So whereas if I want h1 dot class 1, so and color orange, so it will apply this style only to this h1, only the tags which are h1 having the class h1. Let us see in our browser. As you can see, the h1 tag got the h1 tag containing the class 1 got that style, whereas this tag containing the style class 1 did not get that style because it isn't that p tag. Sorry, it isn't that h1 tag. So you can get link to all of these files inside description. You are really free to download it and use it. After this, we have CSS group selector. Actually, if you want to style different type of elements, like this is p tag, div tag and h1 tag, if you want to style all of these in a single block, so h1 p div, if you want to style all of these in a single tag, in a single block, then you can use this. This is called a group selector. Each of the tag is separated by this comma symbol. So I can write here margin top 40 pixels. Right inside our browser, I can see that it is containing the margin from top. Each of element is containing that margin, and if I may remove h1 from here, and keep p and div in this group selector only. It doesn't contain margin. If I may write h1 here again, it contained that margin right here, as you can see. After this tag, we have our universal tag. This is a really great tag that we can use to style each of the element inside our HTML markup. The style in this tag will be applied to each of the element. So right here, as you can see inside our HTML, if I may remove this margin, if I may comment it, and inside in here you can see that this is a not given margin, that we did not give our CSS this margin, that we want this margin. This is by default, this margin is inside our page. So if we want to delete or remove any sort of padding or margin that comes by default, we can write it padding 0, margin 0, box sizing border box. So as you come right here, there is no such default padding or margin inside our tags now. So guys, this is it for this video. You can get all of these lecture study materials and the material used inside these lectures in description. So thank you for watching the video. Goodbye.